ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेमा प्रधायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्वशे नमः वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः. Thank you all so much for, uh, for coming together today. The object of our study today will be to complete chapter 1. So we will cover verses 12 through to 23. In these verses, the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunaka, they express their extreme eagerness to hear about Krishna. They are, their thirst, and we will see it in these verses, their thirst to hear about Krishna is such, it's almost a desperation. Their mood is one of begging Suta Goswami to speak of Krishna and his pastimes. And their questions establish the the supremacy of hearing about Krishna, the sadhana of hearing and chanting of Krishna's pastimes over and above everything else in this world. To the extent that they disregard even the performance of sacrifices, even if it's oriented towards Vishnu, all kinds of sacrifices, all other kinds of activities, and they're only interested in hearing pure Krishna Katha from the greatest of all Vaishnavas, who's a pure devotee, who is a descendant of Srila Vyasadeva, and who can speak pure Krishna Katha. So this is what is being established in the remaining verses of this chapter. So in texts 9 and text 11, so these are taken as 2 of the 6 questions that the sages ask. So one of the questions because in verses 6 through to 8, they've glorified Sutta Goswami's exalted position. In text number 9, they say, and this is their first question out of the 6 questions that they ask. They say, among all that you have studied, can you tell us for certain what is it that you have ascertained? Tatra tatra anjasa ayushman. O one who's blessed with a long duration of life, may you live for 100 years. It shows their intense eagerness. In the simplest way possible, not in complex terms, not in terms that is subject to different kinds of meaning or interpretation, but in simple, straightforward language. Please tell us that which you have ascertained, vinishchitam, to be the ultimate good for all living entities. Pumsam ekantata shreyas. Tanna shamsitum arhasi. So what is that that will lead to the ultimate good for a living entity? And Prabhupada, he, not in this particular purport, but there is a distinction that is made between Shreyas and Preyas. It's very clear that they're here after something that is of ultimate benefit. And it's not just that, okay, engaging in certain sadhana frees us from the material world, and therefore it is Shreyas in the general sense. But Pumsam ekantata Shreyas, that which is singularly, the particularly, which is the highest good of all. Please explain that to us. So that is the first of their 6 questions. The second of their 6 questions is expressed in text 11, where they say, Ataha sado atra yat saram samudritya manishayaha. Please express to us that which is the essence, which in some sense is a similar question, but they qualify this by saying, Yenatma suprasiddhati. Give us that ultimate essence by which the self can be completely satisfied. Now, Vaishnavas do express this as being 2 separate questions, but it can also be taken as the same essential question, which is being phrased in 2 different ways. They're asking for what is the ultimate good for a living entity, and that essence which completely satisfies the self. Of course, the answer is the same. So, text number 12. Now, from text number 12 to 16 comes the third of the 6 questions that they ask. And these verses are really, really spectacular. So let's go through them carefully. Text number 12. Suta janasi bhadram te bhagavan satvatam pati devakyam vasudevasya jato yasya chakirshayah. Would someone like to read the translation?
All blessings upon you, O Sutta Goswami. You know for what purpose the personality of Godhead appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva. Hare Krishna.
So that which the sages had previously called Ekanta Shreyas, text number 9. That, oh, there are devotees waiting in the lobby, sorry. So thank you for letting me know. So that which was expressed as being of the ultimate good for everybody, that which was expressed as being the essence, that which was expressed as completely satisfying the heart. Now the sages reveal what that essence is that they want to hear. So in some sense, they're answering their own question and presenting the conclusion of what they believe is the essence and what they want to hear. So what they say is this: Suta janasi bhadramte. The word bhadramte, all auspiciousness to you. It's a symbol of their extreme eagerness. Now, they want to give a lot of blessings to Sutta Goswami, 100 years, all auspiciousness to you. May your words be unfailing. May your seat be comfortable. May everything, like they want to bless him in every way because they just want to hear. But they're very afraid that they will waste moments without being able to hear Krishna Katha. there's a verse that is often quoted to say that the biggest harm of all is one moment lost without remembrance of Krishna. And this is really their mood. This was the intensity of their feeling. And it is understood with that phrase, Bhadram Te. They want to expand that in much, much more than it is expressed. But Sutta Janasi Bhadram Te. It expresses their eagerness and their desire to give everything they have, every blessing, everything they have to Sutta Goswami, because they want to hear. Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati. So the phrase Sattvata is quite important. Sattvata means devotees. That's how Srila Prabhupada translates it. Yes, of the pure devotees, Srila Prabhupada translates it as. Now, someone else is waiting. So the phrase Sattvata literally means Sat. Sat means that personality who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature, who exists eternally, who is beyond the three modes of material nature. So that personality who has a form beyond the three modes of material nature of Shuddha Sattva, who is possessed, who reveals this form, those to whom Krishna reveals this eternal form are called Sattvata. That is one explanation. Another meaning of this word Sattvata is those who are imbued with Krishna's eternal potencies, Sat potencies. Another meaning is those in whom Bhagavan or Krishna takes pleasure. All of these are meanings of the phrase Sattvata. Now, you could say Sattvata Pati, but the Acharyas explain that by saying Sattvatam, there's a sense of possessiveness. Sattvatam Pati, that Krishna is somebody Pati, he is the Pati who belongs to the devotees. He is the master, he is the protector, he is the Lord who belongs to those whose devotion is such that Krishna reveals himself, whose heart is controlled by his devotional service, in whom he gets pleasure, without whom he cannot live. That is the meaning of the phrase Sattvatam. So Sutta Janasi Bhadram Te Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati. Devakyam Vasudevasya. So Devakyam, in the womb of Devaki, Vasudevasya. So referring to Vasudevasya, it's in the possessive sense. So what that means is of Devaki, who was Vasudeva's wife. So Devakyam Vasudevasya Jato. Jata typically means was born. In this context, it means who revealed his form. Yasya Chikirshaya, who came to execute his own pleasure pastimes. So that's the meaning of the verse. Now the phrase Chikirshaya, to reveal his own activities, to reveal his own intentions, here means that Krishna had a purpose for which he was coming. And this purpose is spoken of through the pages of Srimad Bhagvatam, for instance, in Kunti Maharani's prayers. And also in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So where Krishna says to to protect the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, and to reestablish religious principles, I come again and again. But right after speaking this verse, the verse that appears right afterwards is Janma Karma Chame Divyam. And our acharyas explain that the task of protecting the devotees is already carried out by Krishna's holy names. That the act of destroying demons can be carried out by his powerful agents, even Maya Shakti. And the act of establishing religious principles can also be carried out by great devotees and sages. But it is Krishna alone who can come in order to satisfy the hearts of those devotees who are longing to see his pastimes. Paritranaya sadhunam, who is capable for the pleasure of his own pastimes, destroy those demons like Kamsa, who cannot be killed by anybody else except for him. And to establish not just ordinary religious principles, but to establish those religious principles that enunciate pure devotional service and absolutely nothing else. The culmination of all of these three are really Krishna's pastimes. And so therefore the next verse, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, establishes the true purpose of Krishna's appearance, which is that in the material world, if Krishna did not come to show the transcendental nature of his own pastimes, to attract people ultimately to want to engage in Krishna's service eternally, as manifest in the services of his pure devotees, then there would be no way by which we would ourselves gain a desire to go back and serve Krishna eternally. So ultimately, when Jato Yasya Chakirshaya, that Krishna appeared in order to fulfill his own purpose, that ultimate purpose is to manifest his pastimes, his glories in such a manner that the whole world is attracted and develops a desire to go back home, back to Godhead. So here, that is not directly mentioned in the verse, but this purport will be revealed through the pages of Srimad Bhagvatam, and it was also revealed when Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. So here is Srila Prabhupada's purport. Bhagavan means the Almighty God, who is the controller of all opulence, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. So that's Prabhupada is explaining the phrase Bhagavan. And as devotees know, Bhaga means opulences, these 6 opulences, and Van means one who possesses. So it refers to somebody who has unequaled and ever-expanding qualities which are astonishing and supremely attractive to this world. He is the protector of his pure devotees, Sattvatam, who are imbued with his personal energy, in whom Krishna personally takes pleasure. So the fact that it's not just referring to those who are mixed devotees or those who have other priorities, because if you have somebody here who is inspired by Krishna's pleasure potency, in whom Krishna personally takes pleasure, who possesses Krishna, and whose devotion is such that Krishna manifests his own true form, you can only be talking about pure devotees. So therefore Prabhupada says he's the protector of his pure devotees. So Prabhupada says, although God is equally disposed to everyone, he is especially inclined to his devotees. Sat means the absolute truth, and persons who are servitors of the absolute truth are called sattvatas. And the personality of Godhead, Pati, so Prabhupada is explaining Sat, Sattvata, and now he's explaining Sattvata Pati. And the personality of Godhead, who protects such pure devotees, is known as the protector, Pati, of the Sattvatas. Bhadram te, Prabhupada says, or blessings unto you, indicates the sage's anxiety to know the absolute truth from the speaker. Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appeared to Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the symbol of the transcendental position wherein the appearance of the Supreme Lord takes place. So what Prabhupada means by that last sentence is that in the scriptures, there is a description of 3 levels of consciousness, referring to those who are in deep sleep, Shushupti, those who are in a stage of dreaming, swapna, and those who are in the stage of being awake. It's called Jagrati. So the reason the scriptures speak of these three levels is the levels of awareness that we have when we are awake, dreaming, and in deep sleep are very comparable to the stages of consciousness of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And it is really also through this medium of sleep that we see the activity of the senses, activity of the spirit self, independent of the body. So I'm going off in a little bit of a tangent here, but just to explain why this becomes a recurring theme in the scriptures. So the point made is this: if somebody is in a state of dreaming, right? So here, their eyes are in theory closed for most people. They generally are, their senses cannot engage with the outside world. So what happens here is that this senses, they actually go and reside in the mind. And in the mind, the senses are able to interact or experience all kinds of pleasure. And I think everyone has had this experience. You can eat and actually taste your prasadam. If you're hugging your children in your dreams, you actually feel the same affection that you would if you were awake. And so the idea being expressed here in the scriptures is that the mind is the repository of all of these experiences. It is not just that these experiences exist in the external world, which are the source of pleasure, but it is the mind that is the ultimate controller of the senses, that gives birth to the senses, that controls the senses, and is the place in which all material experience is held. This is the point being made in that example. Another point that is being made is when you're in a dream state, you don't see, there's no external light. Usually people sleep in the dark. There's no sunlight, there's no other form of light. Yet in your dreams, you see everything clearly as you would during daytime. And so the reason that is given is this: the mind, of course, is inert matter, but the soul itself is the source of all light, they say. It's the source of all knowledge. And so therefore, the presence of the soul shines forth. You can see the illuminating impact of the soul when you're dreaming, because not just are objects revealed, not just are the experiences of the senses alive, but you can actually see and interact with everything around you. So this experience, the Upanishads say, explains the soul's property of being able to actually illuminate everything. Without the presence of that soul, which is capable of illuminating everything, the senses have no independent function. So this is another reason why the states of sleep, dreaming, and deep sleep are mentioned. A third reason why this is often mentioned is that the state of impersonal liberation is compared to the happiness of deep sleep. So when somebody is in a state of very deep sleep and they wake up from that state of deep sleep, what Upanishads say is that there is an experience that, I slept well, I was undisturbed. Now, that experience of bliss that comes from that state of deep sleep, even though at that stage, see, in the stage of dreaming, the external senses, which are going outwards in the stage of awakening, they go and reside in the mind. That's in the stage of dreaming. Now, in the stage of deep sleep, even the mind becomes inactive. And in the stage of deep sleep, it's like the soul devoid of every other covering. It is the pure experience of a spirit soul. And so when you wake up from that state, there is still a sense of I experienced deep sleep, or I feel happy coming from that state. And this is, and so when the senses are not active, the mind is inert. What else is it that can experience that sense of I-ness? And so the Upanishads explain that this is proof that the sense of individuality exists even in the state of liberation, that that's never actually removed. And they also explain that this happiness gives you an understanding of what the happiness in the stage of impersonal liberation is like. Now, a fourth reason that this is mentioned is to kind of flip it another way, is that the stage of deep sleep is like the mode of ignorance, where you are completely unconscious of everything around you, and you don't see reality as it is. In a state of dreaming, which is like the mode of passion, you perceive the world, but with some not fully as it is supposed to be. Sometimes in a dream, you can combine two things in a very crazy way. Prabhupada gives example, you can have a mountain and some gold, but in your dream, you see a golden mountain. And so the mode of passion is like that. There is some connection with reality, but it's not, it's somewhat distorted. But the stage of awakening is like the stage of goodness, where you actually see the world as it generally as it is. Now, you can still confuse things, and that's because the modes of passion and ignorance are still there. But it is given as an example of what the mode of goodness is like. But Krishna exists in what is known as the fourth state. So the three stages are deep sleep, dreaming, and awakening. The fourth stage, sometimes called Turiya, you will see this in the fourth canto Bhagvatam, that this is referred to as Turiya. So this Turiya state, or the fourth state, is called the Vasudeva state, or the transcendental state, or the Shuddha Sattva state. And so Prabhupada says the use of the phrase Vasudeva, Devakyam Vasudevasya, that Supreme Lord who appeared from Devaki in the Vasudeva state. So here Vasudeva doesn't in that sense refer to Vasudeva. It doesn't refer to Krishna's father. It refers to the transcendental nature of the Lord as he's appearing. Devakyam Vasudevasya Jato Yasya Chikirshayah. Text number 13. Tanna Shushrushamana Nam Arhasi Angan Varnitam Yasyavataro Bhutanam Shemaya Cha Bhavaya Cha. Can someone read the translation?
O Shuta Goswami, we are eager to learn about the personality of Godhead and his incarnations. Please explain to us those teachings imparted by previous masters, acharyas. For one is uplifted both by speaking them and by hearing them. Hare Krishna.
What's also quite amazing is in the previous verse, text number 12, the sages of Naimisharanya, they could have said, we want to hear the pastimes of Narayana. We want to hear the pastimes of Narasimha. We want to hear the pastimes of Rama. But they start with, we want to hear Krishna's pastimes. And this acknowledges the Bhagavatam's theme that Krishna is the original personality of all Godhead. And hearing about him chanting his names includes every other incarnation of the Lord. And chanting his names includes every other one of his names. So that's the other point that has to be made. So in text number 13, Tanna Shushru Shamana Nam. Unto us, Naha Shushru Shamana Nam, those who are who are endeavoring for, who are very, very eager. Arhasi, you deserve to. We are qualified students. Please accept us. That's the mood. They're not saying, we are sitting here, you have to do this. It is our constitutional right that you have to speak to us. But here the Arhasi, it's almost like a child saying, Mom, I've done my homework. Now you have to give me those cookies. So it is expressing their qualification to receive this greatest of all treasures. Tanna Shushrusha Mananam Arhasi Anganu Varnitam. So Prabhupada in the purport, we will read this. He expands the phrase anu as being in the footsteps of, and we will come to this when we see the purport. Yasya avataro bhutanam shemaya cha bhavaya cha. So please speak to us of those incarnations of the Lord. Please speak to us about Krishna and his incarnations, who all of them act for the Shema, for the protection of, for the ultimate benefit of, for the liberation of all living entities. Bhavaya means upliftment, or for their nourishment, or for their prosperity. So who acts for their benefit, ultimately up to liberation, and who acts for their welfare in this world. Both are being presented here. So Srila Prabhupada says, the conditions for hearing the transcendental message of the absolute truth are set forth herein. The first condition is that the audience must be very sincere and eager to hear. And the speaker must be in line of disciplic succession from the recognized Acharya. The transcendental message of the Absolute is not understandable by those who are materially absorbed. Under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, one becomes gradually purified. Therefore, one must be in the chain of disciplic succession and learn the spiritual art of submissive hearing. It's interesting Prabhupada's use of that phrase, the spiritual art of submissive hearing. In the case of Suta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya, all these conditions are fulfilled because Srila Suta Goswami is in the line of Srila Vyasadeva, and the sages of Naimisharanya are all sincere souls who are anxious to learn the truth. Thus, the transcendental topics of Lord Sri Krishna's superhuman activities, and this phrase superhuman will be quoted in subsequent verses, his incarnation, his birth, appearance, disappearance, his forms, his names, and so on, are all easily understandable because all requirements are fulfilled. Such discourses help all men on the path of spiritual realization. So when Prabhupada is quoting Krishna's superhuman activities, his incarnation, birth, that's an expansion of the phrase varnitam. Please glorify, please describe these things. Text 14. Now, text 14 to 16 should be seen as one unit, even though they are split apart in 3 different verses. And you will see their eagerness being spoken of. So the question has been stated. And so the question was, you know the purpose for which they have come. Krishna has come. So please speak of Krishna. The purpose is Krishna to speak of his pastimes, to expand his pastimes. So also the Goswami, please describe these pastimes to us, along with the pastimes of his various incarnations. So that was the question. And in text 14 through to 16, they complete this by establishing the position of hearing about Krishna's pastimes. Text 14. Apanna samshritim goram yannama vivasho grinan tata sadhyo vimuccheta yad bibheti swayam bhayam. Can someone read the translation?
Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by the fear personified by Krishna.
So, apanna means kind of falling into or being caught by. Samshritim here means the whirlpool or the hurdle of samsara. Ghoram literally means that which is extremely ghastly. Prabhupada translates it as that which is too complicated. So for those who are entangled, who have fallen into the extremely horrible, extremely complicated meshes of the cycle of birth and death, yan nama vivashogrinan. Vivasha means people who are helpless. So when it is a tight knot that is completely caught somebody, their hands and legs are just completely tied. And Prahlad Maharaj describes this, that it is like those people who are not interested in hearing the glories of Vishnu, their hands and legs, it's like they're just tied with chains, the chains of the laws of material nature. But apanna samshitam ghoram, who's and yan nama vivasha, so such individuals who are completely helpless, they have no ability on their own to free themselves. Yan nama vivasho grinan, if they just but once, sadhya, if they just but once take that personality's names, sadhya, immediately vimuchyeta, they are completely freed. Why is that the case? Yat bibheti, because that fear personified, here referring to time, because you can conceive of fear in many different ways. You can say that I'm afraid of the latest AI revolution and the fact that it's going to take my job. You can say that I'm afraid of the weather, that I'm going to get sick. I'm afraid that my children will get into the wrong company, and so therefore will be distracted on the path of life. I'm afraid of disease. I'm afraid that I will one day pass away. I will get sick. But all of these things are controlled by time, by the due course of time, the inevitable movement of time, which controls and moves everything in this world. All causes of fear or all circumstances arise. So when we say swayam bhayam, we mean that time personified, which is the personification of Krishna's will in this material world. So time personified is afraid of Krishna's names. What to speak of Yamaraj or his attendants or any other circumstance in this particular world? It is in a similar mood that in the second chapter of the first canto, we hear, with the rising and the setting of the sun, everybody's lifespan reduces by a day, except for those who hear the glories of Sri Hari. Or we hear, when you hear the phrase, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he very sweetly says, when he hears of this vivasha, of this helplessness, and grinan, sadhya, I mean, when you just once chanting and immediately being freed, his mind, Vishwanath says, goes and remembers the pastime of Ajamil in the 6th canto of Bhagvatam. But how even someone like Ajamil, who was completely caught up and tied end to end in material nature, was at once freed by virtue of chanting Krishna's names. In English literature, you have this idea of a Gordian knot. Has anybody heard this term before? So a Gordian knot, the story goes that Alexander the Great, he was outside a kingdom and he was told that anybody who can undo this extremely complicated knot can rule the kingdom, because this kingdom was in turmoil. He can take ownership of the kingdom. Alexander stepped back and studied the knot. Many people had tried and spent hours and days and months trying to undo the knot. Nobody was able to do this. Alexander just took out his sword and cut it up. He said, here's a solution. And they said, actually, yes, that is a very good way to solve this problem. And he became the king. So since then, this phrase Gordian knot is used to refer to a problem that is so complicated that the only solution is to take out a scissor or a knife or a sword and just cut it, a Gordian knot. So material existence is described as this Gordian knot. And one can try many different ways to try and solve this problem, materially or through partial spiritual methods, like performing fruitive activities or trying to read the scriptures. As Shankaracharya said, nahi nahi rakshati dukarin karne, by trying to study the Upanishads and trying to make sense of what these phrases mean. But by once chanting Krishna's names, you take out your sword and you cut this Gordian knot of material existence. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is the supreme controller of everything. There is no one in creation who is not afraid of the rage of the Almighty. That's a very fascinating statement, isn't it? Who is not afraid of the rage of the Almighty. Have you heard verses in the Bhagvatam that say, out of fear of him, the wind blows, out of fear of him, the sun rises? Have you heard such verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he actually sings songs in his book Sharanagati to describe, among the different limbs of Sharanagati, Goptrutve Varanam Tata, Avashya Rakshibe Krishna Vishwasa Palana, this faith that Krishna will surely protect me. And the reason is when you hear those verses, the wind moves out of fear of Krishna, the sun rises out of fear of Krishna, the fire burns out of fear of Krishna. If even the most fundamental laws of material nature operate out of fear of Lord Krishna, then any circumstance that is there, Krishna will take care of it. So, Avashya Rakshibe Krishna Vishwasa Palana. It is for this reason that this verse is quoted in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is also mentioned in, I think, Brahma Samhita also. What is that verse? Yasyagya Brahmriti Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So Prabhupada says there's no one in creation who is not afraid of the rage of the Almighty. Great asuras like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others who were very powerful living entities were all killed by the personality of Godhead. And the Almighty Vasudev has empowered his name, Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis, with the powers of his personal self. Everything is related to him and everything has its identity in him. It is stated herein that the name of Krishna is feared even by fear personified. This indicates that the name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. Therefore, the name of Krishna is as powerful as Lord Krishna himself. There is no difference at all. Anyone, therefore, can take advantage of the holy names of Lord Sri Krishna even in the midst of greatest dangers. The transcendental name of Krishna, even though uttered unconsciously or by force of circumstances, vivasha, can help one obtain freedom from the hurdle of birth and death. So why are the sages speaking this? Well, they're saying, Sutta Goswami, please varnitam, please describe the pastimes of the Lord. So that obviously begins by describing Krishna's names. Text 15. Yat pada samshraya sutta munaya prashamayanaha sadhya punanti upasprishtaha swardhuni aponashevaya. Someone like to read the translation?
O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganges can sanctify only after prolonged use.
So it is very interesting that this comparison is made to Ganga. And there's a very important reason that this is done. Because just like Arjuna is the standard by which every other archer is measured, similarly, Ganga is the standard by which every other tirtha or pure place is measured. The presence of the Ganga is throughout the scriptures the universal place where every person has ever gone to take shelter. So that's why this comparison is being made to Ganga. So it is said, Swardhuni Apo. So that which appears, Swardhuni here is that river, like the heavenly river Ganga, of the sacred Ganga, Prabhupada says, sacred Ganges, Apaha, water, Anusevayaha. So Anusevaya means, Anu also another meaning is to repeatedly serve. So by serving this Ganga, which had once touched Krishna's lotus feet, which is liquefied Brahman in and of itself, which is the liquefied form of the Supreme Lord, repeatedly, one gains purification. But by associating with the great devotees, whose heart is completely immersed in hearing and chanting about Krishna, instantly one is purified. That's the meaning of this verse. So this verse establishes the point that hearing and chanting purely about Krishna, which are glories revealed in the heart of the great souls, that itself is the highest tirtha in the whole world. There's no highest tirtha than this. One could be sitting anywhere, under any circumstances, but if one has the opportunity to hear pure Krishna Katha, which has to emanate from the lotus mouth of a pure devotee, or devotees following the footsteps of other pure devotees, and so therefore they're pure devotees themselves, that is the best place of all to be. That is the implication of this verse. So there are many verses that come to mind. Gangara parasha hoile paschate pavan darshane pavitra koro eto maragun. So this is a verse that comes from Narottam Das Thakur's E Baro Karuna Koro, where he sings Gangara parasha hoile paschate pavan. By touching the water of the Ganga, paschate, after some time, pavan, it purifies. But darshane, but simply by the darshan of a devotee, pavitra koro etomaragun. This is the quality of a Vaishnava, because the essential nature of a Vaishnava is to always be chanting Krishna's names, to always be immersed in hearing and chanting about Krishna's pastimes. That's the meaning of that verse. Vishwanath says, what to speak of their darshan, but just remembering a Vaishnava who is always hearing and chanting about Krishna. Actually speaking, you don't even have to qualify the term Vaishnava by a Vaishnava who is always hearing and chanting, because the essence of what it means to be a Vaishnava is somebody who is always hearing and chanting about Krishna. That's what it means. If you, there was one lecture in which His Holiness Radhanath Swami said, he said the two items of devotional service, the chanting of Krishna's names and the association of devotees, he said in essence, they're actually the same thing. You can't do one without the other. And this point is expressed in the term prashamayanaha. So shama means somebody whose mind is equipoised, who are undisturbed by the tribulations of this world, who are therefore peaceful. So somebody who's in that state of shama is somebody who's transcendentally absorbed. That's the meaning of the phrase shama. But somebody who's prashama, prakarshena shama, who's completely peaceful, who cannot be disturbed regardless of any circumstance in this material world. That person, you can think of personalities like Ambarish Maharaj. I think we described this in a couple of classes ago, that when Durvasa went all the way up to Vaikuntha, he was saying, but hasn't Ambarish insulted a Brahmana? Isn't this a violation of religious principles? The Lord said, don't talk to me about religious principles. He said, I know very well the difference between you and Ambarish. He said, when you, now remember, Durvasa is a Jivan Mukta. He's a liberated soul, although he has a material body. So as a Jivan Mukta, when faced with a Sudarshan Chakra, Durvasa ran from the planet Earth or Bhumandala all the way up to Vaikuntha because he was terrified. Ambarish Maharaj, his feet did not move a millimeter. It stayed completely still. So the phrase prashama, prakarshena shama, the only person it can apply to is a devotee who is completely absorbed in hearing and chanting about Krishna. So therefore, Prabhupada translates prashamayanaha as absorbed in devotion to the Supreme. That's why Prabhupada renders it in that way. So simply by taking shelter of that devotee whose heart constantly sings the glories of Krishna, in whose association you will only hear Krishna Katha, glories of Krishna's names. In their association, one is instantly purified. And that is the highest tirtha of all. There's no better place to be under any circumstances. Prabhupada's purport. Pure devotees of the Lord are more powerful than the waters of the sacred river Ganges. One can derive spiritual benefit out of prolonged use of the Ganges waters, but one can be sanctified at once by the mercy of a pure devotee of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that any person, regardless of birth, as Shudra, woman, or merchant, can take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and by so doing, can return to Godhead. To take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord means to take shelter of the pure devotees. The pure devotees whose only business is serving are honored by the names Prabhupada and Vishnupada, which indicate such devotees to be representatives of the lotus feet of the Lord. Anyone, therefore, who takes shelter of the lotus feet of a pure devotee by accepting the pure devotee as a spiritual master can be at once purified. Such devotees of the Lord are honored equally with the Lord because they are engaged in the most confidential service of the Lord. For they deliver out of the material world the fallen souls whom the Lord wants to return home back to Godhead. Such pure devotees are better known as vice lords, according to revealed scriptures. The sincere disciple of the pure devotee considers the spiritual master equal to the Lord, but always considers himself to be a humble servant of the Lord. This is the pure devotional path. A point that has to be made here is that the spiritual master is seen in two ways. There are two terms that apply to the spiritual master. One is Sakshad Hari, he is directly Hari himself, and he's also Kintu Prabhorya Priya Eva. He is very dear to Hari. So he is simultaneously Hari himself and very dear to Hari. These two words together, combined, describe the position of a Vaishnava or of the spiritual master. The reason is this: at one end of the spectrum, like in the Sikh tradition, you have those who consider the Guru to be equal to God. On the other end of the spectrum, like particularly if you look at the Abrahamic traditions, they consider that they don't want any human being to be in between them and God. So they consider the spiritual master to be like an ordinary human being. But standing in between these two positions, in almost like a very sharp delineation, is this understanding that the spiritual master is non-different to Krishna. He is personally Krishna himself, but he's also a confidential servant of Krishna. And these two terms together actually only together describe the position of a Vaishnava or of the spiritual master. Text 16. And this ends the sequence of 5 verses that commenced with text number 12 and ends the the expression of longing that the sages are expressing. Ko va bhagavatas tasya punya shlokedya karmanaha shuddhikhamo na shunuyad yasha kali malapaham. Someone read the translation.
Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord?
So, therefore, it becomes almost like a rhetorical question. If the glories of the Lord are so great that they are become a higher tirtha where they're spoken purely by pure Vaishnavas, this is a higher tirtha than even the Ganga or any other tirtha in this world by comparison. If once hearing these glories, commencing with Krishna's names, is capable of cutting the Gordian knot of material existence, which, sorry, excuse this language, but which imbecile is there in this world? Kova, who will not take shelter of this process. Kova bhagavatas tasya punya shloka idya karmanaha. So punya shloka, who is worshipped by worshipable prayers, by virtuous, pious prayers. Shuddhi kamo, for those who desire purification of their heart, who desire to be delivered from material existence. Na shrunuyad, yasha kali malapaham, that which is capable of destroying all the negative qualities of Kali Yuga, which was described in, was it text number 6 of this chapter? No. Text number 10, sorry. Prayena alpa yusha savya, allow asmin yuge janaha, which is capable of completely destroying all the disqualifications present in this age of Kali, up to the point of making somebody the highest category of human being. Prabhupada comments on this in his introduction to the Nectar Devotion. He says, Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya took two personalities born in Brahmana family, but who had fallen by virtue of serving Muslims. He's of course referring to Rupan Sanatan Goswami. And he said he elevated them to the position of being Goswamis. And he said, this is the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. But simply by speaking Krishna Katha, every disqualification in this age is completely removed. Now, if you contemplate the disqualifications mentioned in the previous age, the qualifications associated with being lazy, if someone is spirit, first of all, we have short lives. That is a fact. But this principle of hearing Krishna Katha is so wonderful that if one becomes absorbed in it, the time that we have is actually sufficient. We may have lost the years of our life, even up to now. We may have but a few years, a few months, a few days. Prabhupada gives the example of Katwanga, who had one muhurta. Prabhupada says 1 moment. One muhurta is like 48 minutes. He had 48 minutes. So somebody who has even the shortest duration of time, if one with the right attitude takes shelter of Krishna Katha, it removes the barrier associated with the shortened duration of time. Even if I just have but a few days, it is sufficient, and one should have this confidence. All of us are going to face tremendous tests in our lives, and some of us already are. But that when that final test comes, it's really important to know from the strength of this verse, Kali Malapaham, that this disqualification or this problem of a shortened duration of life, whether it's 3 days, 6 months, if we have the shelter of Vaishnavas, there's no better place to be. We could be in a hospital somewhere. We could be in a place where there's no other association. We have a tape recorder of Srila Prabhupada or some other Vaishnava, a spiritual master speaking Krishna Katha. That is sufficient. We have a minute. We are in a plane that's about to crash. Hearing that recording is sufficient to make this life successful. One should know this point. Kalau asmin yuge janaha mandaha. We describe manda as being lazy. Anybody who's lazy in spiritual life, simply by hearing about Krishna, becomes the most enthusiastic about spiritual life. And they discard all their prior laziness, all their desire to enjoy this world, and simply become enthusiastic to serve Krishna. There's this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita that says, Yara eka bindu pane. Can anybody look up this verse? Yara eka bindu pane. Yara eka bindu pani. Asati gaya uthamani.
Prabhu, is it Madhya Leela 25 to 78?
Yes, you got it. Let me share my screen. Thank you. Can everyone see my screen? Ye leela amrita vine khaya yadi annapane tabe bhakatera dhurbala jivana. Yara eka bindu pane utfulita. Utfulita means it blossoms. Tanumane, the body and mind blossoms. Hase, laughs. Gaya sings. Kareye nartana. Men become stout and strong by eating sufficient grains, but the devotee who simply eats ordinary grains but does not taste the transcendental pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna gradually becomes weak and falls down from the transcendental position. However, if one drinks but a drop of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes, his body and mind begin to bloom and he begins to laugh, sing, and dance with every bit of enthusiasm. So this point should be that this manda, which is the disqualification of this particular age, can be completely destroyed by virtue of hearing Krishna Katha. The phrase sumanda matayo means that one doesn't have the intelligence to hear, to understand transcendental knowledge. But if one becomes attracted to hearing Krishna's pastimes and chanting Krishna's names, the qualification to understand automatically comes. As Krishna says, dadati, what is that phrase? What is that phrase? Tasmat, what is that verse? Buddhi no, the verse before. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam. And that verse is specifically spoken to say that even if one doesn't have the intelligence to understand, Krishna directs the intelligence of that person so that they understand and what they need to know. Exactly at the time that they need to understand, Krishna gives them the understanding and takes them back home, back to Godhead. Sumanda matayo. Manda bhagya. If one becomes attracted to pure Krishna Katha, one will never be distracted by individuals who speak in another direction, because the taste itself is so great. And Jiva Goswami actually makes this point. He says the words, he doesn't say that scripture itself is the highest source of evidence. He says that the words of scripture backed up by personal experience act as the highest source of evidence for a person. And so when somebody has actually tasted Krishna Katha, has actually tasted the sweetness of what it means to be in Krishna consciousness, that person, their mind, their heart acts automatically as a moral compass. And if anybody speaks anything contrary to pure devotional service, anything other than pure Krishna Katha, they will turn away. And they will naturally go and seek the association of other pure Vaishnavas who only speak Krishna's pastimes. Mandabhagya hi upadritaha. And upadritaha referred to disturbances among the devotees, health problems that may arise. In Pune one time, His Grace Radhesham Prabhu had invited His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj was asking him, and he wanted to know in detail, how is the temple? Can you tell me what are the problems here? And Radheshyam Prabhu was describing the top concerns that he had as the temple president, as somebody who was responsible for the yatra. And Bhakticharu Maharaj heard him for some time, maybe 20 minutes or so. But after hearing him for some 20 minutes, he said, you know, Radheshyam, I will give you this advice. He said, you can go and try and keep trying to put out every one of these fires. And you can spend a lot of time and effort doing this, but it will actually have, some but minimal effect. But if you raise the consciousness of the Vaishnavas, then you will find that these problems automatically go away. So he said, please, yourself and everybody else become immersed in hearing and chanting about Krishna, because this is the only solution to these problems. I don't know how many know this, but this is why Radheshyam Prabhu left Pune and went to Vidyapith for 2 years in order to study Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And after studying there for 2 years, he came back, and now every center in India seems to have a Vidyapith run by devotees from Pune and GV. But this was the instruction from His Holiness Bhakticharu Maharaj that started this whole chain of actions. So the point being made is there are always upadritaha, there are always disturbances. There are personal disturbances, health-wise, job-wise, family-wise, and there are always community-level disturbances. But if one simply tries to become attracted to Krishna Katha, and that becomes one's shelter, Kadamba Kanana Maharaj used to call this Vishram Sthan. He said, there always has to be a place that you go to, which is like your natural shelter. Some people like to call family. Some people like to, watch something, or they run as a matter of self-regulation. They have some shelter. But he said, we need to find that one element in Krishna consciousness that becomes our Vishram Sthan, our repository, our shelter. And if that shelter can be hearing and chanting about Krishna, it could be in Kirtan, it could be hearing Bhagavatam, it could be speaking Bhagavatam, it could be hearing classes, it could be distributing books, which is another form of Kirtana. But if one can find shelter in hearing and chanting about Krishna, in preaching Krishna consciousness, then these problems which were previously big, it's not that they just go away, but one gets the proper perspective and they reduce in their intensity. At the highest level, like we're talking about Parikshit Maharaj, his intensity of hearing, his depth of hearing was such that he forgot his hunger, he forgot his sleep, he forgot his fear of death. And he was telling Shukadev Goswami told him, do you want to stop hearing? You've heard for something like 4 and something days. Just in the or 5 days. This was just at the beginning of the 10th canto. And Parikshit Maharaj said, no, please don't stop. Sukadeva Goswami said, do you want to rest? Do you want to eat? Do you want to sleep? Parikshit Maharaj said, no, please don't stop. Because the moment you stop, at that point, I will become overwhelmed by hunger, thirst, and fear. So please don't stop. He said, as long as you are hearing, my consciousness rises completely above all of these things. In fact, the 11th canto Bhagavatam, in describing the Mahabhagavat, it describes the level of a Bhava Bhakta. One of the definitions is that personality whose absorption in hearing Krishna Katha is so great that they rise above every problem in this material world. Now, we are not at that level, but the principle still applies, that by hearing Krishna Katha, one rises above the difficulties that one is having, certainly to different degrees according to the level of our absorption, and puts them in proper perspective. So this statement by the sages is extremely well thought out, where they say, Shuddhi kamo na shruniyad, yashaha kali malapaham. It is capable of completely removing the disqualifications, the dirt that comes in the age of Kali. and is capable of completely destroying material existence. Here's Srila Prabhupada's purport. The age of Kali is the most condemned age due to its quarrelsome features. Kali Yuga is so saturated with vicious habits that there is a great fight at the slightest misunderstanding. Those who are engaged in the pure devotional service of the Lord, who are without any desire for self-aggrandizement, and who are freed from the effects of fruitive actions and dry philosophical speculations, are capable of getting out of these estrangements of this complicated age. The leaders of the people are very anxious to live in peace and friendship, but they have no information of the simple method of hearing the glories of the Lord. So much, this was so much what Prabhupada wanted to give. Prabhupada would meet with in San Francisco, where he started the Love Feast, for instance. Prabhupada used to say, let all the people who are addicted to drugs, let them come here. We have a solution. Can't they see, like all of the hippies here who have now become happies, can't they see this? And he said, go and speak this to the council, go and speak this to the government. Let them give us the same funds that they want to give to Alcohol Anonymous, Drugs Anonymous, Sex Anonymous, and all of these problems that are occupying their time. Let them give this money to us. We'll have many festivals where we glorify Krishna, and all of these people will be saved. On the contrary, such leaders are opposed to the propagation of the glories of the Lord. In other words, the foolish leaders want to completely deny the existence of the Lord. In the name of secular state, such leaders are enacting various plans every year, but by the insurmountable intricacies of the material nature of the Lord, all these plans for progress are being constantly frustrated. They have no eyes to see that their attempts at peace and friendship are failing. But here's the hint to get over the hurdle. If we want actual peace, we must open the road to understanding of the Supreme Lord Krishna and glorify him for his virtuous activities as they are depicted in the pages of Srimad Bhagvatam. So that is the third of the questions by the sages from 12 through to 16. Now the fourth question is described in text 17. Tasya karmani udharani parigitani suribhi bruhina shraddadhananam leelaya dadata kalaha. Can someone read the translation?
Its transcendental acts are magnificent and gracious, and great learned sages like Narada sing of them. Please, therefore, speak to us who are eager to hear about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. Hare Krishna.
So the phrase udharani, Prabhupada translates it as being magnanimous. Udharani means extraordinary, great, very liberal. So udharani, on one level, can mean extremely great activities. So it refers to Krishna's pastimes, such as the creation of this world. Another explanation, because the creation of Krishna creates this world for two reasons. One, to give living entities, and this is explained in 11th canto Bhagavatam, to give the living entities an explanation, an ability, the facility to experience their desires in this world. And number two, to go back home, back to Godhead. And if Krishna did not enact his pastimes of creating the material world, the jivas would not be able to do either. So therefore, those pastimes are very magnanimous. Another explanation of Udharani are those pastimes which are meant for the pleasure of the devotees. So you think about the lifting of Govardhan Hill, which where Krishna did it. Oh, following my advice, now my own family, referring to all the Brajabasis, they're all in danger. So I need to take care of them. They are my people. And that's really significant. Krishna said they're my people. So he lifted Govardhan Hill out of his magnanimity. to protect them. And he also lifted Govardhan hill because previously the gopis never had the chance to look at Krishna unabashedly. But now, I mean, if they looked at him, they could always be questioned. Why are you looking at him so long? But now he was doing something so extraordinary that they had every reason to stop to look at him continuously and not stop looking at him. So Krishna's pastimes are magnanimous. They give pleasure to his devotees. Tasya karmani udharani parigitani, which are sung, which are broadcast. Gitani means to be sung. Parigitani are sung everywhere. Parigitani suribhi, by the great devotees, by the great souls. Bruhina shraddadhananam, please speak to us who are ready to receive with great respect. Leelaya dadata kalaha, those pastimes that Krishna himself, along with his various incarnations, has conducted. So kalaha can mean that just as Krishna enacts the pastimes of creation by manifesting as the guna avatars of Brahma and Shiva, just as Krishna enacts the pastimes of creation by manifesting as the Purusha avatars, as the three Vishnus, just as Krishna manifests his pastimes in different other avatara forms, as Narasimha, Vamana, Rama, etc., and as he manifests his pastimes himself. Please speak to us about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. Surabhi here, Prabhupada in the purport explains Narada and others. So he gives a list of Narada, Vyasa, Valmiki, Devala, Asita, Madhava, basically our whole lineage. The personality of Godhead, Prabhupada says, is never inactive, as some less intelligent persons suggest. His works are magnificent. So these are the two meanings of Udharani: great, magnificent, and magnanimous. His creations, both material and spiritual, so referring to his pastimes in the material world and his spiritual pastimes, are all wonderful and contain all variegatedness. They're described nicely by such liberated souls as Srila Narada. Does anybody know what the phrase Srila means? It's a very esoteric meaning. Shri means opulence, La means Leela. So somebody who has become opulent by virtue of entering into Krishna's pastimes is given the honorific Srila. So when you say Srila Prabhupada, you're referring to that personality, Srila Prabhupada, who by virtue of entering into the secrets of Krishna's pastimes, or directly by virtue of being an associate of the Lord, has become the most fortunate, the most wealthy, the most opulent person in the whole universe. That's the meaning of the term Srila.
Okay. Sorry, Abhishek, does it enter into pastimes, or does La mean just pastimes?
La means Leela. So Shri means opulence, La means Leela. So the full explanation, even though it's not spelled out entirely, is this. They're described nicely by such liberated souls as Srila Narada, Vyasa, Valmiki, Devala, Asita, Madhva, Sri Chaitanya, Ramanuja, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, Sridhara, Vishwanath, Bharate, Bhaktivinod, Siddhanta Saraswati, and many other learned and self-realized souls, like Srila Prabhupada himself. These creations, both material and spiritual, are full of opulence, beauty, and knowledge. But the spiritual realm is more magnificent due to its being full of knowledge, bliss, and eternity. Prabhupada says, the material creations are manifested for some time as perverted shadows of the spiritual kingdom and can be likened to cinemas. They attract people of less intelligent caliber who are attracted by false things. Such foolish men have no information of the reality, and they take it for granted that the false material manifestation is the all in all. But the more intelligent men, guided by sages like Vyasa and Narada, know that the eternal kingdom of God is more delightful, larger, and eternally full of bliss and knowledge. Those who are not conversant with the activities of the Lord and his transcendental realm are sometimes favored by the Lord in his adventures as incarnations, wherein he displays the eternal bliss of his association in the transcendental realm. By such activities, he attracts the conditioned souls of the material world. As the supreme controller of both the material and spiritual worlds, the Lord has different incarnations of unlimited categories. So Prabhupada here is explaining the phrase kalaha. So kalaha refers to incarnations, qualitative gunavatars such as Brahma, Rudra, Manvantara avatars like Manu, Prithu, Vyasa, who are his Shakti-avesh avatars, or empowered incarnations, are his material qualitative incarnations, Prabhupada says, and then his Leela avatars like Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, Vamana, etc. But it's Lord Sri Krishna himself who is the fountainhead of all incarnations, and he's there for the cause of all causes. So it's very clear throughout the whole time they've been speaking about Krishna, right? They want to hear about Krishna. And so when they're saying, speak to us about his incarnations, they're referring to Krishna's incarnations. So the implication consistent with the Bhagavatam's theme is that Krishna is the original source of all of the incarnations of the Lord. And that's why that's what Prabhupada explains as the meaning of kalaha in that last paragraph. So this question, therefore, is we are eager to hear about the pastimes of Krishna's incarnations. So the first question was, please explain to us what you have understood to be of the ultimate benefit. In the second question, please explain to us that which is the essence, which will completely satisfy the self. The third question, which is the culmination of the first two, is please speak to us about Krishna's pastimes and the purpose for which he has appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva. The fourth question, please speak to us of that personalities, Krishna's various incarnations. Now, the subsequent question, the fifth question, will be expressed in text number 18. Ata kya hi harer dhiman avatara kata shubha lila vidadatha swairam ishwarasyatma mayaya. Translation.
O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations, such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by his internal powers.
So, it appears at one level that the question in 17 and 18 appear to be similar. But I believe the purpose of text number 18 specifically are referring to those incarnations of the Lord intended to create and maintain this world. So, Atah Akyahi Harer Dhiman. So, Harer here refers to Krishna. Avatara Kataha Shubha. Those transcend Shubha here means purified pastimes above the three modes of material nature. Lila Vidadatta Swairam. So, Swairam here means independent. So, Prabhupada translates it as being pastimes. Ishvarasya Atma Maya, which have been conducted by his own internal energy. So Prabhupada says, for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material worlds, the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead himself appears in many thousands of forms of incarnations, and the specific adventures found in these transcendental forms are all auspicious. Both those who are present during such activities and those who hear the transcendental narrations of such activities are benefited. So in text 19 through to text 22, and see, the sages are not necessarily here. Their heart is full of questions. At the essence, all of their questions, they focus on hearing about Krishna, right? So here we may be splitting the questions in a somewhat more technical manner, but the essential message throughout each of them is that they want to hear about Krishna. And they're also simultaneously, by expressing this question in so many different ways, they are really expressing their extreme eagerness. And so they've spoken of they've glorified Suta Goswami, they've given him blessings. Please, we want to ask you this question. They've asked about Krishna. Then they ask a question, then they glorify Krishna's pastimes. And then they ask more questions. And then now again, 19 to 22, they're expressing their extreme eagerness and the fact that they will never be satisfied. They want Suta Goswami to keep speaking and speaking and speaking as elaborately as possible. They don't want him to suddenly just stop in between. So text number 19. Vayam tu na vitrapyama uttama shloka vikrame yat shrinvatam rasa jnanam swadu swadu pade pade. Can someone read the translation?
We never
We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. Hare Krishna.
So the phrase Uttama Shloka can mean Uttama. That Tama here refers to ignorance. Uttama refers to that who is beyond the modes of ignorance. So Uttama Shloka therefore refers to a name of Krishna, that personality who is above the modes of material nature, who is glorified. It can also refer to that personality who is glorified by prayers that are above the modes of material nature, because he himself is above the modes of material nature. And so therefore it refers to those verses of extremely wonderful composition, because his activities and his pastimes are so extraordinary and wonderful. If at all he is to be glorified, he is glorified in an extremely wonderful way. And so Rupa Goswami, in enumerating the 64 items of devotional service, he describes that one item of devotional service is to offer prayers of one's own composition. But then he also says another item of devotional service is to offer prayers as composed by the great devotees. It's very, very difficult to compose prayers of one's own composition because one doesn't have a proper understanding of Krishna, nor does one necessarily know how to approach Krishna. But those great devotees who have a proper understanding of Krishna and his position, who have really relished Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes, when they speak, these compositions which are not of this world, which glorify Krishna perfectly according to their transcendental experience, and when that's spoken by us, we imbibe the same mood and the same understanding that these great devotees had or have and are imparted. By the way, one other important point to note is in verses like the previous one, the phrases are in the present tense. So when they're saying, speak to us of Krishna's pastimes, they're not saying, speak to us of those pastimes that were conducted so many years ago. What they're trying to say is that Krishna's pastimes are eternally going on. So that's an important point to note as well. So vayam tu na vitripyama. So tripta means to be satisfied. So na vitripyama means that we will never be satiated. We can keep drinking Krishna's pastimes, but we will never be satiated. And they're saying Vayam tu. If Suta Goswami says, well, others may be satisfied by hearing some, I can speak some. They're saying Vayam tu, but us, we will never be satisfied. You have to keep speaking. And the other thing that they're saying here, by use of the phrase tu, Suta Goswami could have been saying, it is really extraordinary. I mean, you are personalities who are dedicated to performing sacrifices, right? You've just sat here to perform sacrifices for Shatam Samaha, for the equivalent of 1,000 years. How is it that you want to hear about Krishna? This is surely astonishing. They're saying, no. That was something we did when we didn't know what else we could do. But that, when now we have acquired your association, by virtue of your association, we who are looking for a
your voice is breaking.
problem of material existence, we who are looking for a solution to the problem of material existence, have now found that which is actually the core of what we want. This is actually what we want. So please don't ignore that. This is actually what we want. So that's the significance of the word tu, which is like a but. It's intended to answer an unspoken objection by Suta Goswami. Uttama shloka vikrame. And they're saying, Yat Shrinvatam Rasa Jnanam Swadu Swadu Pade Pade. They're saying that there's no reason why we should be satisfied, or why we should be satiated, rather. Because just like if you're eating, when you eat, your stomach becomes full, right? And so then you're satiated, you can't eat anymore. But yet Shrinvatam, the years are like a complete, like they can take as much as you give. They will never become full. So they can keep hearing. And unlike the stomach, they never become full. And then another reason why you might be satiated is that your tongue stops tasting. I don't know if anybody has ever eaten so much of something that they stop tasting it. Has anybody had this experience? I used to eat 1 liter of ice cream in one sitting. Now, it was my go-to comfort food, but I would buy one of those connoisseur 1 liter ice creams, cookies and cream or something like that. And then I'd just be eating. And then I would get to about 2/3 of the jar. I couldn't feel my tongue anymore. I couldn't taste the ice cream, but I'd be like, I don't want to keep this in the fridge. Let me keep eating. And then I'd finish the whole liter of ice cream. So when you stop tasting, you're satiated. There's no point eating any longer. But they're saying, Rasa Jnanam, we know how to taste the mellows of Krishna's pastimes, and that taste is never going to go away. And so therefore, the more you keep speaking, the more we will keep tasting. There's no reason for us to stop drinking Krishna's pastimes. And swadu swadu pade pade. If you're eating something like sugarcane, you chew it, and then it stops giving you juice, so you spit it out. But Krishna's pastimes are sweeter than the sweetest sugar in this world. And no matter how much you chew, their sweetness keeps increasing more and more and more at every step. So unlike the material world, and Prabhupada in this purport is going to compare material taste versus spiritual tastes. Unlike material tastes, where one becomes full, one loses the ability to taste it, or the item itself stops giving taste. For us, we have a bottomless desire to hear. We will keep being able to taste the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes, which are in and of themselves of extraordinary variety and have so much taste associated with them that if just heard or realized, they just open out more and more and more. So there's no reason for us to stop hearing. This, by the way, is Sridhar Swami's explanation of this verse. So Prabhupada explains, there's a great difference between mundane stories, fiction, or history, and the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The histories of the whole universe contain references to the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas are histories of bygone ages recorded in connection with the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord, and therefore remain fresh even after repeated readings. For example, anyone may read Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagvatam repeatedly throughout his whole life, and yet find in them new light of information. Mundane news is static, whereas transcendental news is dynamic, inasmuch as the spirit is dynamic and matter is static. Those who have developed a taste for understanding the transcendental subject matter are never tired of hearing such narrations. One is quickly satiated by mundane activities, but no one is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. Uttama shloka indicates that literature which is not meant for nescience. So uttama, that which is above nescience. Mundane literature is in the mode of darkness or ignorance, whereas transcendental literature is quite different. Transcendental literature is above the mode of goodness, and its light becomes more luminous with progressive reading and realization of the transcendental subject matter. There's an experience that I just wanted to share with you. Somebody was asking me the other day, it was actually a child. The child asked me, Prabhu, why do we say that Krishna is magical? So I thought about this child's question for some time. And then I think the answer I gave was this, that if you look at creation, this is Prabhupada's answer. So if you look at creation, it is in and of itself magic, full of magic. Prabhupada says, how is a cow able to eat grass and produce milk? How is a single seed that is this tiny able to produce the biggest of all trees? How is it that this animal is able to run at this speed, or a human being has this level of intelligence that they can come up with their own languages? Prabhupada says that every living entity has been given with a unique potency, that it's a reflection of Krishna's own potency. The more you look at creation, the more you see magic everywhere. And the purpose of being able to see creation in this way is that you appreciate Krishna's magic. Now, you think about that phrase, Janmadi Asayataha. So after I gave this answer, I walked away. And then I thought about this phrase that we discussed in Bhagavatam class, Janmadi Asayataha. And we had made the point that the purpose here was not to think of creation in some technical way, but to meditate upon that Lord and the qualities of that absolute truth by whom all of creation is possible. And so when somebody is able to appreciate the beauty of creation, one begins to increasingly appreciate Krishna's beauty and Krishna's own qualities in a real way. It's not just a theoretical manner taken from just a book, but in a manner of realization. And so every time you hear the phrase Janmadi Asya Yataha, all of these experiences, they just come to the forefront of your consciousness. And this is what the sages mean by Rasa Jnanam Swadu Swadu Pade Pade. The more one begins to realize by virtue of chanting Krishna's names and serving according to the instructions of Guru, the more one is able to enter into the mysteries. And the statements of scripture, they just become revealed in one's heart. And when one hears Krishna's glories through the statements of the scriptures, these glories, they begin to explode in one's mind and heart more and more. It's the same sentence, which will take on increasingly deeper meanings throughout one's life. Text 20. Kritavan kila karmani saha ramena keshava ati martyani bhagavan ghoda kapata manushaha. Someone read the translation.
Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, along with Balarama, played like a human being, and so masked he performed many superhuman acts.
So the phrase Ati Martyani refers to superhuman. or that which is above the conception of mortal men. And so Bhagavan, that personality who's unlimited, ever increasing, extraordinary, unlimited qualities, he performed extraordinary acts, such as marrying 16,108 wives, being with them simultaneously, dancing with the millions and millions of gopis by expanding himself simultaneously, by sitting in a circle and sitting with every single cowherd boy, even though none of them perceived this to be true, by himself becoming all the cowherd boys. So Ati Martyani. So these are extraordinary activities that are inconceivable for anybody. Kapata Manashaha. He appeared to be just like one of us. So therefore it is Kapata Manashaha. It appeared like he was a human being, but he was just hiding. Kapata. That form cheated many people who didn't have the proper understanding, who didn't have the proper access. They were cheated. He was hidden from them, Gudaha. But for those who actually were allowed to enter into the mysteries of his pastimes, they understood that he was Bhagavan. And Prabhupada gives examples of Krishna, even though he conducted so many human-like pastimes, had performed so many extraordinary feats. And Prabhupada provides a warning that there are certain unscrupulous men who have created such incarnations. They say, Krishna, like you have God, he married these wives, so he's just like one of us, so we can also be God. But the phrase Ati Martyani contradicts this point. What Krishna did, nobody else is capable of doing. Text 21. Kalim agatam agyaya kshetresmin vaishnave vayam asina dhirga satrena katayam sakshana hare. Can someone read the translation?
Knowing well that the age of Kali has already begun, we are assembled here in this holy place to hear at great length the transcendental message of Godhead, and in this way perform sacrifice. Hare Krishna.
So in some sense, they are winding up their questions. So Kalim agatam agyaya. I mean, this is a theme that they've repeatedly brought up. Kshetre asmin Vaishnave. So remember in text number 4, Naimishe animisha kshetre. We described the phrase animisha refers to Vishnu, whose eyes never close, who therefore sees everything. Nothing goes by him. So that is confirmed here. Kshetre asmin Vaishnave. So this is a place of pilgrimage for Vaishnavas because it is a kshetra associated with Lord Vishnu. Vayam asina dirgha satrena. We are here on the pretext of performing sacrifices, but actually we just want to hear. We have this much time. You want to speak about Krishna's pastimes? We have 1,000 years. Please just speak Krishna's pastimes. Kadayam sakshana hare. So towards the end of Prabhupada's purport, they said, the sages of Naimisharanya began this process in a place meant specifically for the devotees of the Lord. They prepared themselves to hear the pastimes of the Lord over a period of 1,000 years. By the example of these sages, one should learn that regular hearing and recitation of the Bhagvatam is the only way for self-realization. Other attempts are simply a waste of time, for they do not give any tangible result. Lord Chaitanya said, he was talking to Prakashananda Saraswati, he said, my spiritual master gave me the holy names, and then he taught me the importance of that verse. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nameva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gataramita. The phrasing is very, very unique. Lord Chaitanya said, my spiritual master taught me the importance of this verse. You can imagine the depth of the feeling and the realization that is being expressed in that statement. Text 22. Tvamna sandarshito dhatra dustaram nishtiti shatam kalim sattva haram pumsam Karnadhara Hivarnavam. Translation.
We think that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of human being.
So the point being mentioned is that for those who really desire Krishna, Krishna sends a spiritual master. And that's the realization that the sages are expressing here. They say, I think, the phrase dhatra means by providence, but really what they mean is Krishna. Guru Krishna prasadebaya bhakti lata bija. That by the mercy of Krishna, you have come as a spiritual master. Now, this age of Kali, there are many difficulties, and Prabhupada in the purport speaks of the insurmountable difficulties of Kali. Kali sattva haram pumsam, that age which deteriorates all the qualities of a man. Sattva haram, so sattva means the mode of goodness, which takes away all the attributes associated with sattva and fills this person with just ignorance and passion. But you have come as Karnadhara. So Karnadhara here refers to the transcendental captain or the boatman of the boat of Krishna Katha, who will therefore pull us out of material existence. So Prabhupada at the end of this purport says, learned men therefore must be cautious of this age, and if they at all want to cross over the dangerous ocean of Kali, they must follow the footsteps of the sages of Naimisharanya and accept Sri Suta Goswami or his bona fide representative as the captain of the ship. The ship is the message of Lord Krishna in the shape of Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagvatam. Text 23. Bruhi Yogeshware Krishne Brahmanye Dharma Vartmani Swam Kashtham Adunopete Dharmakam Sharanam Gatah. Translation. This is the sixth question, by the way.
Then Sri Krishna, the absolute truth, the master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode. Please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter.
So Kashtam refers to Krishna's own abode. So when Krishna went to his own abode, that Krishna who is described as Yogeshware, he's omnipotent. That is the intention of the phrase. So Prabhupada translates it as Lord of Mystic Powers. The intention of the sages here is to say he's omnipotent. He left, he must have done something to protect religious principles. Bruhi Yogeshware Krishne Brahmanye, who is the protector of the Brahmana. Brahmani Prabhupada translates it as being the absolute truth. But Brahmani can also mean somebody who has compassion for the Brahmanas. Dharma Varmani means the person who is the protector of religion, who's like the armor who protects religion, religious principles. So that personality who is omniscient, who is the protector of Brahmanas, who is the protector of religious principles, the absolute truth, when he went back to his own abode, where did Dharma take shelter? So Prabhupada's purport. Essentially, religion is the prescribed codes enunciated by the personality of Godhead himself. Whenever there is gross misuse or neglect of the principles of religion, the Supreme Lord appears himself to restore religious principles. This is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. And many people actually ask this question. So Krishna came and went. When there's so much irreligion going on, where is Krishna? Why isn't he coming? So does anybody know the answer to this question?
Holy name.
Kali Kali Nama Rupi Krishna Avatar. Yeah. So here the sages of Naimisharanya are inquiring about these principles. The reply to this question is given later. The Srimad Bhagvatam is the transcendental sound representation of the personality of Godhead, and thus it is a full representation of transcendental knowledge and religious principles. And of course, the Srimad Bhagvatam, which ultimately glorifies Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of the first canto, first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Questions by the Sages. I've gone 5 minutes over time. I'm very sorry. If any of the Vaishnavas want to stay to ask any questions, I will stay for some time. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagvatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhu. Thank
Hare
you so
Krishna.
much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I have a question.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, this, as you rightly said, 17 and 18, you know, there's questions more or less look similar.
Yes.
So, but 17, finally, they're saying it is referring to Purushavadars. Right, but I'm not seeing that in the text. So, how it is based on our acharyas giving their
Yes. That's right.
yeah.
Yes, that's right. Here, I think Lilaya Dadata Kalaha. Tasya Karmani Udharani Parigitani Suribi. Bruhi na Shraddhadhana Nam Lilaya Dadata Kalaha. By his various Kalaha, his plenary expansions, how Krishna has Dadata. So the phrase Dadata, how does Srila Prabhupada translate it? Yeah. So Dadataha means Prabhupada says advented. His various plenary expansions, how did they come and engage in various pastimes in this particular world? And so,
Yeah, adventurous pastimes.
Yes, the phrase Kalaha
Incarnation, it refers to
refer to
incarnation.
the various incarnations of the Lord. And then the next verse they say Avatara Kataha.
Avatar, yeah, incarnation.
But here, Atakya.
Because the Leela is used in both the places, Prabhu. In both verses, Leela is also there. Leela, yeah.
Correct. And so I'm just looking at my notes. Give me a second. So the only distinction that I can see, comment by Sridhar Swami, who says, Avatara kataha sthiti artam eva tattad avasare, ye matsyadi avataras tadiya kata svairam lila kurvataha. So the phrase sthiti artam here means for the maintenance of the world. So that is the only distinction that I can see.
Yeah.
And then Shri Jiva Goswami says, Avatara, Purushasya Gunavatara Leelavatarascha. So it refers to the qualitative incarnations and the various Leela incarnations by which the world is maintained. So I think that includes, for example, Matsya at the time of the destruction of the world, for instance. So I think that's what's indicated here.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I have in my notes. Let me contemplate this question in a little bit more detail, and if I have a better
In
answer.
Shubhodhini, it says as per according to Sri Jiva Goswami.
Yeah.
That's what you also mentioned that.
Gunavatara, Leelavatarascha. So let me look into this in a little bit more detail.
Sure.
I think there is a distinction, although I probably need to read it in a little bit more detail to uncover the difference. But the essential point that also needs to be made is that many of these questions are in essence the same, because they're wanting to know about Krishna's pastimes. I mean, when they say, tell us what is the ultimate good that you've ascertained in this world? What is the essence of all scripture? Now, these answers are not different from one another in their ultimate sense. So they're really asking the same question in different ways. They want to know about Krishna. They want to know about his incarnations. They want to know how he's maintaining religious principles generally, and also now that he's gone back to his own abode, how religious principles are being maintained. So despite the splitting into 6 questions, and the split into the number of questions is actually a distinction made by Sridhar Swami. Vishwanath and Jiva Goswami don't explicitly make that distinction. But regardless of those distinctions, the theme is essentially one. But so they can be seen as variations of the same underlying idea. But let me, for these two particular questions, let me look at it in a little bit more detail, and I can come back to you.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Mani Bhushita Mataji, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So my question is very simple. The scene which I'm trying to understand is like because these sages are asking the questions to Sutta Goswami, but there is another place, I mean the same place actually maybe, where Sukadeva Goswami is there and Parikshit Maharaj is there. So my question is like whether these sages are asking them first and then Sukadeva Goswami comes and then Parikshit Maharaj is. What is the situation, Prabhu?
So what is this other source that you're referring to?
No, I'm just trying to understand this, like, because the Bhagavatam with the sages, but what we know that, Parikshit, Sukadeva Goswami came and then Parikshit Maharaj, he wanted to listen from Sukadeva Goswami. So these questions are asked before that or after this?
So these questions were also heard by Parikshit Maharaj, because the Bhagavatam in its construction of 12 cantos, 18,000 verses is an eternal manifestation. And so it is Jiva Goswami's presentation that Sukadeva Goswami spoke the entire Bhagavatam, 12 cantos, 18,000 verses, and Parikshit Maharaj heard the whole thing. And the same thing was heard in the forest of Naimisharanya.
Prabhu, can I add something here?
Yes, please, Prabhu.
I know. I think Mataji, what you're asking, I think Sutta Goswami was sitting when Sukadev Goswami gave the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. In fact, it is I understand from lecture what I heard, that Sutta Goswami was called and asked to sit very close by Sukadev Goswami so that he hears, and then future he gives that. So that's the sequence. Sukadev Goswami first told, and that was heard by Sutta Goswami. That's why he is now made to sit in the Vyasasana, and Saunaka Rishis are asking the questions. Am I right, Prabhu? I don't know.
Yes, Prabhu.
This is what I heard from.
That's 100% correct. But Mataji, was that your question or was it something else?
That is one question, and the second question
that was a question.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. When Ghanshyam Prabhu was taking Saturday's classes, if you remember, I think Srimad Bhagavatam, all the brief overview of. So that time he explained that it's like just the commentary, like you're sitting in the cricket ground and someone is giving commentary, and one person is sitting at home and listening to the commentary. So that this example he gave. So that was in my mind. But I was confused whether these questions were asked before that or after Sukadeva Goswami came or not. And
so the idea is this, that even in the Ishopanishad, for example, at the end of the Ishopanishad, you have personal prayers to the Lord. Om Kratosmara Kratosmara, oh my dear Lord, whatever I've done for you, please remember this. Vayur Anilam Amritam. May the life force of my heirs merge into the broader prana, may etc., etc. Right? So it feels like they're being spoken, but at the same time, we understand that the Ishopanishad is an eternal literature, that the verses don't change; they're eternal. So the understanding is this: that Swayambhuva Manu, who's the speaker of Ishopanishad, these verses manifest from his mouth, and when they manifest from his mouth, they take on a special mood, unique to Swayambhuva Manu. So the same eternal verses, but greater depth of their meaning is revealed according to the speaker. Just like you have the same Radha Gopinath, and if somebody who's not a Vaishnava tries to worship them, there's some level of revelation or no revelation of their glories. If a devotee worships them, their sweetness is revealed still more. And if a great devotee worships them, same Radha Gopinath, their beauty is revealed still more, still. So the scriptures are like that. When they're spoken by, is Mataji disappeared? Oh, sorry, Mataji is there. So when the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Sukadev Goswami, even though the Bhagavatam was eternally existent, all 18,000 verses, when spoken by Sukadev Goswami, they became still more relishable. And so therefore you say, Sukha Mukhad Amrita Drava Samyutam. Even Narada and Vyasa, they were hearing the Bhagavatam as though it was new and fresh for them, because Sukadev Goswami's mood was manifesting the verses of Bhagavatam with still more sweetness. And the same verses, they manifested from the mouths of Shaunaka Rishi and Sutta Goswami, because each of them were empowered by the potency of the Lord, by the internal potency of the Lord, which caused them to manifest these verses. And they've taken on a mood specific to these Vaishnavas also. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yes,
it is.
I understood, Prabhu. Can I ask small, related to this only question quickly? Prabhu, these questions were asked when sages were asking these questions. I got this question doubt that sages, how do they knew about Krishna? Because Parikshit Maharaj didn't know anything about Krishna, so he was inquisitive, right? But in case of sages,
Parikshit Maharaj was inquisitive.
yeah, about Krishna, to know Krishna, Krishna's pastime, right?
But why do you say he didn't know anything about Krishna?
I mean, I didn't say anything, but he just was inquisitive. He didn't know pastimes, right? Is that correct? Or
It's not mentioned that he didn't know, because the term Parikshit implies that he was looking for Krishna his whole life. He was Pariksha, examining every other living entity to see if they were that original four-handed, beautiful form he had seen within his mother's womb. And therefore his name became Parikshit. But he was, even if a devotee is quite experienced in life, there are certain times where they seek guidance. And then Krishna sends the right person to bring out what they already may have heard many times before.
So my question was, I don't know how to put this in question. Did sages knew about the pastimes of Krishna's and his opulence and all, and still they were asking whether you should narrate? Is that the situation?
With respect to the Shaunaka, etc. sages, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that they're given as an example of jigyasu, people who are curious, as you, I think, were as you were saying earlier. What that means is that the term jigyasu applies to individuals who have a long-term desire to remove misery and obtain something for their own benefit. So someone like Dhruva wanted something for immediate benefit. Something like Gajendra wanted immediate relief of distress. But the term jigyasu means somebody in the long term who wants to remove distress and obtain something for themselves. When they heard Romaharshana Sutta speak the various Puranas, they developed a great faith in the Puranas. But when they had association of Sutta Goswami, that was when they developed the desire to hear about Krishna. So I have, with respect to the sages at Naimisharanya, what is mentioned is that their inclination, that pure inclination for just hearing and chanting about Krishna, came about in the association of Sutta Goswami, not before then. Of course, Krishna's pastimes may have been known to some degree by the various personalities of that time, but not to the extent that a pure Vaishnava who is absorbed in these pastimes were. But simply by Sutta Goswami, by the fragrance of Sutta Goswami's association, the mind of the sages at Naimisharanya was influenced and it accepted pure devotional service. That's the understanding. Much the same as Akrura. when he went towards Vrindavan, he was, even though his worshipful Lord was the four-armed form of Vishnu, because when he was leaving Vrindavan, he took a dip in the river. He was chanting the Gayatri mantra unique to his particular mood of worship. And the form of the Lord he saw was the four-handed form of Vishnu. But when he was entering Vrindavan, because of association with the gopis of Vrindavan, he developed a unique feeling of attraction for the two-handed form of Krishna. And that was merely by the fragrance of association with the gopis of Vrindavan. So similarly, with the sages at Naimisharanya, it was really the fragrance of association of Suta Goswami that made the difference.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Pratibha Mataji, I think you had raised your hand for a very long time. I'm sorry I was not able to acknowledge your question. Was there a question that you had?
Sorry, Prabhuji. Yeah. Prabhuji, just in continuation with the Mataji's question, just for my clarification, Prabhuji. So when the Bhagavatam was first spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaja Parikshit, so all these questions were also there, Prabhuji, at that time also?
Yes.
Okay. And when the sages of Naimisharanya were asking these questions, so without their knowledge, they were actually asking these 6 questions, Prabhuji, which means like they are not aware of these 6 questions at all. And they were just asking on their own.
That's what it seems like. And the answer is this, just like, for example, sometimes when you are speaking, I'm sure you've had this realization. You're speaking and then you feel like, oh, Krishna just inspired me to say this. And then you look at the book and Prabhupada has given those same examples. I'm sure you've had this experience. So it's because these pastimes, these verses are eternal, by Krishna's inspiration, they manifest through somebody's mouth. That's the understanding. So
Thank you so
for
much.
the same reason that we say, for example, for the Damodarashtakam, that this is an eternally perfect prayer which manifested through the mouth of Satyavrata Muni. We say it in the same way. And so this is actually how the Vedas, they reveal themselves. They are sometimes hidden, they're not manifest. And then through the heart and the mouth of a great sage, by virtue of transcendental realization, they are spoken. And so therefore, they take certain names associated with a personality who had revealed manifest their presence in the world.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, you just mentioned that these 6 questions were spoken during the dialogue between Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadeva Goswami.
Yes.
So Bhagavatam is eternal, but these questions were put forth by the sages later on. So how is that? Who spoke? Parikshit Maharaj asked these questions, or who spoke about those 6 questions?
The first one, yeah.
With respect to Parikshit Maharaj's original Bhagavatam, it is not mentioned who spoke those verses. So that indication is not given. But what Srila Jiva Goswami mentions is that the entire Bhagavatam in its 18,000 verses was spoken. It would be lovely to know who spoke those verses then.
A bit looks or sounds mystical, actually.
Not really. I mean, it's the same example in terms of like, if, for example, any one of the Vaishnavas here give a Bhagavatam class, somehow Krishna will inspire them to speak something. They'll be like, huh, where did that come from? And then when they look at Prabhupada's purports, they'll say, these are the same examples. Many devotees have this experience. They may not have read the purport, but they will just speak it and they'll be like, Prabhupada has used the same thing. So these are actually, it's like they're eternal truths which are manifest through from the heart through the lips and the mouths of Vaishnavas, because Krishna is the one seating in everyone's heart. He's the original spiritual master of every living entity, and he inspires those living entities who wish to glorify him in this way. So therefore, it's not surprising that the same verses, even unknown to someone, are spoken, because just like Ramananda Rai said, I'm like a puppeteer and you are like a puppet master. Sorry, other way around. I'm like a puppet, you're like a puppeteer. And as you pull the strings, I dance as you make me dance.
But the simple logic, because Parishit Maharaj was asking all the questions, he would have asked these questions, right?
So it's a very good question. I don't necessarily know how to say, because when Parikshit Maharaj welcomed Sukadeva Goswami, did he then go back and ask the 6 questions, and then the rest of the first 18 and a half chapters of Bhagavatam were spoken? I'd love to know the answer to that myself. But what we hear is that Parikshit Maharaj heard the full manifestation of Bhagavatam. Now, how he heard, I'm not entirely sure. Could it be that before Sukadeva Goswami appeared, some of the sages spoke these verses? They were part of that original discussion. It's speculation, but it's an interesting speculation. What Prabhupada would call philosophical speculation that aligns with the scriptural statements rather than being mental speculation. So it's hard to know. But if any of us ever come to know, it'll be wonderful to discuss.
But a lot of things appear mystical to me, like when we discuss all these things. Sometimes there is no logic. It just feels like mystical, some things.
It is certainly mystical because everyone is being empowered by Krishna. That's the thing. I mean, the way I understand it is that Krishna empowers devotees with realization, and they speak. Devotees, when they speak or when they're thinking, they don't understand where these ideas have come from. It's because Krishna is inspiring them. So therefore, it's not illogical to say that the Bhagavatam was similarly inspired from within the heart. Because Krishna was dictating from within the heart, and these verses were spoken. Because we said this also in the first class, that the phrase Satyam indicates that every living entity ultimately denotes the absolute truth, qualified by that this is his part and parcel, or this is a manifestation of his potency. So ultimately, therefore, when a devotee speaks, or when anybody speaks, it is to be understood that Krishna is inspiring them either directly if they're a devotee, or through his Maya energy if they're not. And this is an eternal reality, our dependent nature. And that's indicated by the phrase Satyam. So it's not actually illogical. It's certainly mystical, because Krishna acts in, and that's why we have the phrase Achintya. Even though you have everything ultimately refers to Krishna, qualified by his attributes, there's still the appearance of distinction. And by Krishna's energy, they remain distinct while being inconceivably dependent on and inspired by Krishna. How is that? How do you distinguish this? How do you describe this? And so therefore it is called Achintya. And that's why our philosophy is described in those terms. Otherwise, the term Vishishtadvaita means exactly what I said. I remember Akhanda Rasa Prabhu asked me this question once: what is the distinction between Vishishtadvaita and Achintya Beda Beda Tattva? Philosophically, it's very difficult to explain the difference, because if you read the Shatsandarbhas, Jiva Goswami uses almost the exact same terminology that Ramanuja uses, because he uses the phrase Vishishta. This is that anything in this world is Krishna himself, Vishishta, but qualified by his attributes. This is exactly what Ramanuja says. But then he explains that it is extraordinary to think that despite the fact that anyone is ultimately they are dependent upon Krishna, they're inspired by Krishna, yet they retain their distinct identity. And by Krishna's energy, nobody transgresses their unique identity. It's not like I suddenly expand and become 2 jivas or 3 jivas, or I expand the realm of my nature, or Maya expands the realm of its nature and becomes suddenly the Swarup Shakti of the Lord. And this boundary is determined by Krishna's energy. And this interaction is so inexplicable that it's called Achintya. And this is Jiva Goswami's explanation of why we call our philosophy Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. That one has to accept the inconceivability of Krishna's energy, where even though everyone appears to be distinct, it's Krishna ultimately who inspires everyone. And yet every living entity retains a unique experience. It's not like we are robots. We retain a unique experience of being instruments of Krishna's grace in this world, which is the highest experience of a devotee. And to encapsulate this point, our philosophy is called Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. So it's not illogical, it's actually how reality works. To say it any other way would run into the problem of calling the Bhagavatam Paurashaya, not Apaurashaya. Because if it is composed or if it is spoken by sages who are on the path of being developed, then how are those verses transcendental in nature? So that is the problem that you run into. So each of these verses are transcendental in nature. Every one of these prema varshi aksharayate, every one of these syllables is capable of giving prema bhakti, because it's a manifestation of Krishna, every single syllable. And so, yes, it is beyond the realm of how we would construct these dialogues, but that's the reality that is being presented. At the same time, it is not wrong for us to say Parikshit Maharaj said this, or Saunaka Rishi said this, because they did say it. It's just that they were inspired by Krishna to say it that way. So it's not wrong for us to say that Shaunaka said this, or he had this doubt, or this was the problem. It's not wrong for us to say this.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Just the
Mataji.
last question, very
Yes,
short
yes.
one.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhu, Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by like Sukadeva Goswami and Sutta Goswami. My question is Srimad, because you said Srimad Bhagavatam is eternal, right? It is originally there. So my question is like Srimad Bhagavatam, because there are millions of universes, is Srimad Bhagavatam being recited in all the universes?
Yes, it's an eternal literature that is sometimes manifest and unmanifest. Just like Krishna himself, sometimes he rises and sometimes he disappears, appears to set in a particular place. So Srimad Bhagavatam is like that. Sometimes it rises and sometimes it never is composed, but sometimes it manifests and sometimes it disappears from our vision. But then it manifests somewhere else. And therefore Srimad Bhagavatam is described as being an incarnation of the Lord, or non-different to Krishna. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you all so much for taking this valuable time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.